Thank you all for coming today. I'll adjust my position not to get blinded by the light beam there. This is exactly what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about dopamine, because I strongly believe that it's one of the neurotransmitters that helps us a lot in a work environment. And it would be great to understand how does it really work and what we can do about it if it works, well, not well, and how can we make it work better. Oh God, what happened? I pushed the button. So who am I and what do I do? You already know, so let's skip that one. And here we are, and that's dopamine. So neurotransmitters, we need to understand that first. Those are substances that goes through our nervous system. I'm really sorry for the simplification. Just to monitor and control our behavior. Those are proteins, so they go between neurons, the little, like tree-like cells. We all remember biology, right? Tree-like cells, and they secrete the little proteins saying, hi, I'm dopamine, so I'm making the next neuron work faster, or I'm, for example, serotonin, and I'm making the whole system calmer. And dopamine is the one that gives us pleasure, which is very important. It's the part of our reward system. So unfortunately for us, and why unfortunately I'm going to talk about, the dopamine reinforces our behaviors. So if the behaviors are nice and beneficial for us, the dopamine works for our advance. If they are not beneficial, not to say harmful, the dopamine will actually, the word that is allowed on the conference, will make us feel worse or maybe even destroy our health. Unfortunately, I will tell you later how and why. Dopamine also is responsible for the drive, for the motivation. This is actually why I thought that maybe it's a good idea to talk about dopamine here on this conference, because all of you who work, most of you probably work with people. I think that some of you may be servant leaders, which means no power, but a lot of influence. And the question, the team is not motivated. Can you do something so that they are more motivated? They work faster, they work more efficiently. Why is this not done yet? Blah, blah, blah. I used to be an agile coach. I remember discussions with managers and the board. So the motivation is dopamine. If we understand how it works, maybe we'll be able to help our coworkers, our peers, and ourselves as well regulate the motivation in order to be, more efficient. But it also is responsible for motor function. Problems with dopamine system they are quite common in, for example, Parkinson's disease. If you have ever seen a person with a Parkinson's disease, those people have problems with initiating a movement. And this is dopamine. Also, if you have ever seen an infant, before they start controlling their movement, they, for example, try to put their hand closer to their mouth because it's nice to suck little hands. And it's like this. It means that the dopamine system is still not working perfectly well. It needs some adjustments just to get control. But also, and that's something that we rarely talk about when you talk about dopamine, it is responsible for our focus. How did that happen? Well, not so long ago, we were all living on the trees. By not so long ago, I mean from the evolutionary point of view, our brains are still kind of there. The way we're, constructed is the way that was, few million years ago, and we were hunter-gatherers. So we were moving from, cave to cave and from area to area in search for food. We were in herds, there were many people there, and there were some who were responsible for hunting, meaning, killing animals to eat them, and gathering, meaning berries, some mushrooms, with famous mushrooms these days, berries, mushrooms, this kind of stuff that actually made our stomachs full, very important thing. And dopamine was still is the neurotransmitter who was responsible to initiate the action to gather food or initiate the action to avoid some risks or to initiate the action to move the whole herd to other place because the food is scarce here, or it's getting colder, or there was a flood, or whatever. So this one was a special neurotransmitter supposed to be secreted only in, well, crucial situations. Not anymore. Today, high achievement is the responsibility of dopamine. So we're running toward different goals. Here we talk about career goals, about financial goals. But of course there could be relationship goals. Good God, do I say yes or no? That something says to... No, doesn't matter. It talks to me. I don't know what to do. Okay, so these days dopamine makes us strive for goals. Might be career goals, might be fame, might be power, might be money. But also might be, I don't know, like marathon, or maybe a very complicated climbing path, or any other type of achievement. Whatever in our brain, in our system, in our identity is perceived as a success, dopamine will push us toward it. Very useful, right? But dopamine is also responsible for that weird feeling of doing click or cross, and that nice spike, this feeling, oh wow, this is so good. This is dopamine. And this one actually is the dopamine responsible for control. Unfortunately, dopamine, no, not unfortunately. No, let's go unfortunately first. Unfortunately, dopamine is responsible also for addiction, for mood disorders, for burnout. Because it requires a lot of energy to pursue something that our dopamine forces us to do. If we don't leverage that with what? I'll talk later. If we don't leverage that with any type of charging, whatever that is, for various people that might be different. If we don't charge ourselves, it's difficult to sustain proper levels of motivations and also to sustain enough mood. Why? There are two circuits in our brain that works together with dopamine. One is the novelty circuit. So we see something new and it's pleasurable. Everyone who believes that it's better to start a project than to finish one is triggered by dopamine of novelty, and everyone is kind of guilty, and also social media. That one works with that circuit. So I scroll, there is something new, there is dopamine release. I scroll, there is something new, there is dopamine release. I scroll. But the dopamine is released not because I scroll and saw something, but because I anticipate before I scroll that there is going to be something new. So this dopamine is the dopamine of anticipation. This is why when we plan our vacations, we are so excited about it that quite often we're more excited about planning than when we're actually on holiday. Dopamine of anticipation, thank you very much. It says 24 minutes, good. This one is triggered by the achievement, and sometimes this circuit is called a control circuit. This one is more expensive, so to speak, because it requires far more effort to secrete that in our nervous system. So we will get the dopamine from the control or achievement circuit if we actually finish something, which is far more difficult than starting. So in order to get that dopamine, we have to cross the task of the list. We have to perform, mundane tasks, collect the invoices, do the Excel table, whatever that is, that's achievement and control. It is also secreted if we follow any type of routine. So if someone has a morning routine, meaning I wake up, I meditate or I brush my teeth, maybe I exercise, maybe I eat something, but I follow the routine, following the routine, dopamine of control, very useful. Unfortunately, this dopamine also works in the cycle of I desire something, dopamine spikes because I anticipate, I get reward, and the problem is I also get a crash. And this line shows us why. Why, for crying out loud, dopamine is responsible for addiction, but also for burnout. Because whenever our dopamine spikes, for God knows what reason, and then it goes down, for a short period of time, our receptors are not sensitive to dopamine anymore. So if something really exciting happened in our life, and then we feel like, well, again, that's the word that is not supposed to be here, like a rotten apple. And then we feel like a rotten apple. It's because our dopamine receptors are not, for a second, like they need to rest. Let's use that metaphor. They're resting. So we don't have dopamine in our system, even enough to sustain our normal basic mood. And we feel like a rotten apple. The more we get dopamine to spike, the worse and the longer worse we're feeling. So if we are not in control of how our dopamine is present in our nervous system, we will feel like rotten apples more and more often and for longer. The little dot line that you can see here is something that is called baseline dopamine. And the baseline dopamine is the normal level of dopamine that everyone has in his or her brain during the day. And even though we have it, if the receptors are resting because they were boosted by the dopamine a second ago, even though the dopamine is there, the receptors are resting and we cannot suck the dopamine into the neurons, so nothing happens. This is why addiction happens to any type. If we talk about addiction to substances, it's of course because the substance itself, like alcohol or crack or a few other things, goes to the receptors of the dopamine. So it's not dopamine that goes there, it's the substance itself. It spikes the receptor activity, we feel great, but then the receptors go to sleep. They need to rest, they are drunk. And even though we have baseline of dopamine, we feel like a rotten apple. But next time, because the base level of dopamine grows, next time we have to push the receptor even harder. So we drink more, we take more, whatever we take, and it goes. It works exactly the same with every type of behavioral addiction. And this is why social media and our phones are so bad for us. I'm really sorry, they are as bad for me as they are for everyone. Sorry. And this is exactly what happens. If we use it subconsciously, unconsciously, for too long, we have the down spike of the dopamine and we feel like rotten apples for longer. So unfortunately, it might be that the burnout we're experiencing and we're attributing to our work might be partially caused by the hygiene of our everyday life. What to do to avoid that? First, we'll go with some cues for people, like for everyone, to take to yourself, and then I'll follow up with some cues for leaders. But first, leverage things that are creative, problem-solving, challenging, which spike the dopamine from novelty, with routine admin work and tasks requiring focus. This is more expensive dopamine, but this one, from the control circuit, it doesn't cause that effect. So this effect happens only from the novelty circuit. The control one, the one that is, when we cross the task, when we finish something, when we focus on something, this one doesn't cause the drop. So this one is actually far more healthy for our system because it doesn't cause the drop, but also because our identity gets something very important, which is called self-efficacy. So it has been proven that if we use the dopamine from the control system, meaning we know of ourselves, biologically we know, because we use the control system often enough, that we are efficient, meaning if we plan something, we do something. If we start something, we finish it. It goes into our identity and it has a special place, and it actually protects us from burnout, from depression, at least caused by, of course, it won't protect us from like feeling down when something really bad happened in our life, but it will protect us from lapse of self-assessment due to something that happens at work. So if my boss comes to me with a negative feedback, and it's a hard feedback to take, and I have my self-efficacy as a protection, I'll take feedback, it will not knock me out. I'll get that, I can maybe even absorb, maybe I can even learn something, but it will not knock my ego, because self-efficacy is so biologically like ingrained in us that it will help us go through. If you like dopamine, like for example, if you like to train a lot, do not stack dopamine sources, meaning do not drink caffeine before training. Do not listen to very energetic music during training, because the training itself gives you a lot of dopamine. If you stack more and more on top of it, the line will go fast down and it will take your receptors longer to recover. So unfortunately, in order to stay sane, we need to be able to say no to some pleasurable things that happen. And of course, depending on individual differences, for some people, stacking that doesn't cause the downside effect. I'm the one, maybe unfortunately, who cannot listen to music when I train, because it just, knocks me over. I need to train in silence, otherwise I get too excited. One thing that I strongly believe we don't talk enough about is that somehow we ended up in a culture of avoiding discomfort, and that's not healthy for us. In order to keep our dopamine levels under control, we need to consciously be ready for the fact that there are things which are going to be hard, or there are things that we're not going to succeed in, or there are things that will make us feel miserable. And as long as those are our experiences when we're trying to do something, it's fine. So I'm talking about discomfort in action, not about discomfort from watching sad or cruel news. Not that type of discomfort. Let's make that clear. It's not any discomfort. It's the risk of taking action and not succeeding. This is something that will keep our dopamine under control, but also will give the necessary balance for our brain. Our brain is a protein organ. It resembles muscles, however, it's definitely not a muscle tissue. It resembles muscles far more than we are aware of. If we train it to absorb different type of experiences, we will be fine. If we go just with one path, it will lose its ability because it's very adaptable. And it's our job to adapt it to a wider range of experiences. If we go just with one path, the brain will actually lose the ability to absorb discomfort when it comes from externally, like from the environment. So if we manage to kind of do some of that, I'm sorry, I'll use the word, but that's not mine, that's Huberman, and it's allowed because he's a scientist. He says microfucks. So he's doing something not very nice for himself, just for a short time, like for example, doing a task that he normally delegates to someone because he hates it. And it doesn't mean that I have to be, the one who is suffering and saying, oh God, I'm training my brain, I'm doing that, it's a microfuck. No. It's like, oh God, I have to be able to do that from time to time so my brain does not forget how it is to do a thing that is not pleasurable. Just that. And the last and not least, you need to be able to balance the dopamine with here and now molecules. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that puts us immediately into the future. It promises us things, and it requires a lot of energy. In order to restock the energy and to get the balance, but also get a positive mood from different sources, totally different neurobiological sources, we need oxytocin. So we need to take care of our relationships, also animals, a very useful source of oxytocin. We need serotonin, which is here and now. Here and now. We meditate, we do slower exercise, like running, not say that, running very fast, not oxytocin, dopamine. Running slowly, having a walk, doing yoga, doing some stretching, serotonin. Let's not say that, every training will give us serotonin, because that's actually not true. Serotonin we get when we sit down and do nothing. After boredom. First we get bored, and then it's serotonin. So we have to survive the boredom. And then we have endorphins, which are, those playful things that actually makes us feel pain less, but also have some fun. And that are all of the cues that I could think about, that are applicable to every one of us. If and when you are a leader, stop bringing new things. Stop bringing more new things before they finish the new things you brought for the last meeting. People get because of the power dynamic in organizations, people get burnout with new things if they come too often. They start to fear the novelty, because it's fun only for the person who brought it. The dopamine spikes when it's my idea. When it's someone else's, if I have a very good buy-in, maybe it will work. But if it's only my idea, and I have the dopamine saying, Jesus, that's gonna be the Jesus project of this organization, then, they just look at you and say, okay. Mm-hmm. And they feel like that. So when it comes to dopamine or our teams, I think that first rule is simply do no harm. But at the same time, set the bar high. Expectations and demands are the microfacts of our work environment, and that's okay. Because if people strive toward sensibly set demands, obviously sensibly set, they will get the dopamine from the control system. The more expensive dopamine that will make them more resilient, because they will have the self-efficacy that I talked to you about. So don't be afraid to set demands. Don't be afraid to give a so-called negative feedback, saying, listen, this is not the quality standard that we've agreed on. It needs to be done better. And then people say, oh my God, my ego is so hurt. And you say, okay, I understand that, but it still needs to get done better. I'm really sorry you feel that way. And that's all. You are not responsible for them feeling good with demands. If they feel good with demands, it may mean that they are too low. Nothing but in feeling good with demands, but it means that we, in our head, we meet them immediately. If I feel good about something that I have to do, it means that either I'm, my self-assessment is somewhere over the line, or I actually can do that thing. Is it ambitious? No. So if you want to see whether you're setting ambitious demands, make sure people are like, oh my God, are we going to do this? Is it possible, actually? If you ignore their efforts and if you throw away the project that they have just done, that will decrease the level of dopamine for the control system and make them feel like those hamsters in those small wheels. And I know that sometimes it's not your responsibility because someone else has thrown that because of God knows what reason, sometimes very reasonable business reason. If that happens, so the whole team was working on a project, it has been finished, and it's a really nice project, and no one is going to use that. I was thinking what to do, and my only idea was that maybe in this particular case, it's good to have a meeting, which I'm not a fan of, but still a meeting, and talk about, okay, someone has thrown out the result of our work. Can we draw some insights of what have we learned during that project that actually stay with us for the rest of our career? And I know that sometimes those projects were stupid from the very beginning and nothing like that will happen, and we cannot help that. But if that was an interesting project and people were engaged, and still, because of some reason, it's not well used anymore, so it's actually thrown away, it might be good to talk to your people about, okay, what have we learned? And to tell them that we are not trying to sugarcoat, we're just trying to get this feeling that we have not wasted our time. And honestly, most of the time, people, maybe some people to some extent, maybe others more and others less, will be able to draw some ideas of what actually happened during that project that helped them develop in a professional way, even though the results are not used. Now I will tell you a secret. Whatever we say, regular motivation is overrated. People need random rewards. What does it mean? If every Thursday there is a pizza at the same time, people get used to that. So maybe the pizza should be sometimes on Thursday, sometimes on Tuesday, sometimes there is no pizza, and it's not a punishment, it's just no pizza, maybe there are apples. Make sure that you do not get used, but also your teams are not used to rewards. Because if we get used to rewards, they stop working. This is why salary raises are not motivating. Exactly this is why. Because we just get that, and the dopamine spikes. Dopamine spikes before we get that, then we get the raise, then dopamine drops. And it doesn't spike anymore. We're just like, yeah, we deserved it. Where is the next one? Because of the dopamine. So if you want your people to have that pleasure from small things, make sure they are random. If you would like to know more, there is the Molecule of More, which is a very nice book. It has some simplifications. In Polish it would be Mózg chce więcej. The book. I strongly recommend that. Very good one. And I hope we have some time. We have 6 minutes for questions.
We have some questions.
Great. Love questions.
So let's start from the top. Is it the reason why some folks, including me, not me, of course not me,
Okay.
are adrenaline junkie? We just want more dopamine
Yes.
because after the drop we are
Yes.
feeling like a rotten
That's
tomato.
a short answer to a short question. Yes, that's exactly the reason. Of course, there is one more. We are more and less sensitive to dopamine, and we need more or less dopamine because of the individual differences. I'm quite dopamine-driven, so I need a stronger boost. The things that for some people are really dopaminergic, I'm like, yeah, every day for me. But basically, yes. Short answer is yes.
Okay, so how about, what do you think about the apps, which was designed for, what do you think about using apps which are designed for people with ADHD?
It depends. I think you need to look what it makes to you, like what it does to your brain. If it's an app that calms you down because it shows you how to proceed with your day, and then you don't have to look at it anymore, that's great. But if you keep scrolling it like crazy, well, no. It depends on the not only on the app, of course, of the design, whether it's any type of science there behind that and so on, but also what does the app do to your brain? I would ask myself that question.
Which relates to another question, which is, if I'm the leader, how can I recognize the level of the dopamine in my team?
Okay, I can answer that one, I think. So, if they are excited by the new things, but the old one are stacked up and never finished, you know, that ghosts in the backlog that no one wants to do and they have to be done, unfortunately, and they keep pushing that away, it means that they are not used to use the dopamine of control, but they are okay with the novelty. If they seem that they cannot start anything or finish anything and they seem apathetic, that there is a problem and we need to help them go out of this problem, not by giving them new things, by making them finish the old ones. because they will get the more expensive dopamine, and the dopamine will rise a little bit, but will not cause that spike. So you will get the baseline level, and then you can introduce a new project.
Okay. Maybe this one. I'm not sure about the intents, but I will just read it as it is.
Okay.
How about the training routine? Routine is creating down trend, but on the other hand, training and exercising should increase dopamine.
But routine, like the training and exercises increase dopamine by definition. Of course it does. And it's great. We need that spike. It does a lot of good things to our brain. Nothing bad in that. Just don't drink caffeine or energetic drinks, and be careful with music and other, hyping things, including chemical stimulators that sometimes people do to have a better achievement. If you do training, if you train to stay healthy and maybe achieve something, great. If you access your limits every day just to lift the weight that you think you have to, or to run in a time that you feel that would be a success, and then you want to compare that to other people, with that I would be cautious.
Okay, I think this could be enough. If you have more questions to Marta.
I'm here during lunch at least, and then I have to run, so I'm recognizable with that jacket. You can always come and ask whatever you want, or talk to me about your experiences. Would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.